I'm also very happy to be on this program with Karen and Teresa, two warriors in the party and for against racism and for women's liberation. I heard what you both were saying about the surge in the Me Too movement, and I have noticed today in one of the bourgeois newspapers yet another editorial that is starting to say the Me Too movement is going too far. This is a phrase that we heard in women's liberation in the 70s. Well, up to this point it's okay, but more than that, you're going too far. But you know, as the great left poet Muriel Rukeyser once said, the problem is never going too far. The problem is in not going far enough. And the program tonight is about, for me, the lessons I've gleaned from the recent victory in Alabama against neo-fascism and white supremacy in how we can go further. So, let me just, I'm going to talk using some points I made in the article that's in this week's Workers' World, but there are a lot of details I don't have time for. So, please, if you want to know more, pick up a copy of the paper for those details. The defeat of archbishop Judge Roy Moore in Alabama's Senate race on December 12th was celebrated far and wide. I was following social media that night. A Facebook message said that night, I just got the good news on my cell phone here in Bolivia. One message on Facebook. The next day, the president of an elite Massachusetts college began his faculty meeting. Let's take a moment to thank Alabama for that victory. I heard that from my daughter-in-law who teaches at this college. So people everywhere paid attention to this victory. Here's the important thing. The bourgeois newspapers celebrated it as a Democratic Party victory. That is not accurate or true. This was a grassroots, mass movement against racism and woman-hating. And it was led in the turnout and the organizing by African American people, especially black women. What I see as the connection between Teresa's comments and what I have to say is the deep, deep link between the role of black women in this bourgeois election and their historic subjection to sexual assault and rape, the sexual assault and rape of black women in the South, and of course in the institution of slavery throughout the U.S. This victory in Alabama was a victory in what used to be called the heart of Dixie. That was on the license plates when I was growing up. If you've ever heard the expression, going south, that is about being sold into slavery and being sent south to the deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. So when you're talking about the leadership of black women in this election, you're talking about the leadership of women who know from their own family histories all the way back to their great-grandmothers about what black women in the South and in Alabama have been subjected to around rape and sexual assault. And when they were organizing against this racist and white supremacist Roy Moore, they were also organizing against the history of rape and sexual abuse in their own lineage. There were other people, well, before I say that, in terms of the coalition building, I just want to say, for those of you who haven't been following precisely Moore's comments, this is someone who during his campaign advocated, basically said it would be good to return to slavery because people were happier there. Obviously he meant white people. He, in a court ruling when he was an Alabama Supreme Court justice, in 2002, he actually said LGBTQ people should be executed to protect the family. This is someone who in 2016 ordered the county probate judges to ignore the U.S. Supreme Court decision on legalizing same-sex marriage. We could go on and on with his terrible comments. This is someone who is neo-fascist, racist, white supremacist. He believes in a male-dominated heterosexual Christian institution where wives are ruled by husbands and unattached girls and women are fair game for sexual predation. And I think most people have followed the Washington Post story that started on November 9th that scrupulously documented how he hunted in a predatory way and then sexually assaulted underage teenage girls when he was the deputy district attorney of Etowah County in Alabama. Now, I just want to note here, not all evangelical white people have this exact same belief system as Roy Moore. We can talk more about the role of religion in this election later in Q&A if we want to. But Moore's extreme right-wing statements and actions are consistent with something that's now called Christian nationalism, where the believers in that system think that the U.S. needs to be returned to Christian rule. And again, we can talk more about that later, but the one thing I do want to say is that someone who is a Christian nationalist runs a high-level Bible study group that cabinet members attend, and also Vice President Mike Pence, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Energy Rick Perry. They've all attended these Bible study sessions, the kind of system that Moore believes in. So it's a big deal, not just because of his personal horrific beliefs and behavior, but because of his connections to this right-wing network. It's a big, big victory that he was defeated. Again, the bourgeois press is celebrating this as a victory for the Democratic Party. The person elected instead of Moore was Doug Jones. He is a white man, a white former federal prosecutor who pushed and convicted two of the 4 Klan members who bombed the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. That was in 1963. The case that I hope most people know about, where 4 young black girls died and many other people were injured. Jones also built the case against Eric Rudolph. Fewer people know about this case. In 1998, he bombed the women's health care clinic in Birmingham, which provided abortions, and he also committed a series of anti-abortion and anti-gay motivated bombings in the South that went on for 2 years, 96 to 98. So Jones was it was central to convicting the perpetrators in both of those cases. And this was there was a lot of praise around those cases during his campaign. But here is, again, an important lesson. The undying and fierce tradition of organized resistance to racism and right-wing bigotry was built in Alabama long before Doug Jones came on the political scene. And if you want to know more about that historically, look at the article in it'll be online in its entirety on a web post hopefully soon. The first part of it is in this week's paper. It's Devin Cole's essay on Hammer and Hoe, the Alabama Communist Party. This is part of the organized resistance that I mentioned. The other thing that people should really know and be proud of and celebrate is that our own presidential candidate, Monica Moorhead, is part of this history of resistance in Alabama. Monica's grandfather founded the Snow Hill Institute and Academy in the late 1880s. It was a central location of training and education for black leadership in Alabama. It was in Wilcox County, which is one of the poorest counties in Alabama. Not only did that institute, Snow Hill, last as an educational institute until the early 70s, it was revived in 1979 and by Monica's mother. And I'm sorry that I'm stammering here, but my Mac is about to run out of power and I forgot to plug it in, so I'm going to have to take a pause. So it was revived by her mother in 1979. It went on for more years. And Monica herself, of course, has been deeply involved in the struggles of the South, including the important defense of Joanne Little, who killed an African-American young woman who killed her jailer, white jailer in Virginia, when he tried to rape her. The comrades were involved deeply in defending Joanne, and the victory was won when she was acquitted of that act of self-defense against her white jailer. It's a very, very, very important victory. Tradition of resistance has been in Alabama for centuries. Thousands and thousands of incidents we could talk about and never come to the end of it. This victory against Moore was a mass victory. Even an Inside the Beltway website had to concede that it was a mass victory, saying that the campaign against Moore logged 1.2 million voter phone calls and knocked on 300,000 doors. And they also said this was an effort made more notable because of the lack of any real Democratic Party infrastructure.
Wide. Now, I want to underline that. They're not really talking about Democratic Party infrastructure in the counties per se, in individual counties. They're talking about the National Democratic Party. This is an important political point for people to understand about Alabama. After the Black Civil Rights movement was victorious around voting rights in Alabama, there was white flight from the Democratic Party into the Republican Party, just like in the suburbs, from cities to the suburbs. There are Democratic parties in the individual counties that are in the lineage of the Lowndes County Freedom Democratic Party, that Southern Black farmers and residents of Lowndes County in Alabama created together with the SNCC organizers for voting rights. At the time those Democratic parties arose in the South, in the Deep South, they were not accepted by the National Democratic Party. There was an enormous struggle to get black delegates from the South actually accepted as delegates into the Democratic Party convention. Well, after this white flight from the Democratic Party after the Black Civil Rights Movement, the National Democratic Party off and on has just simply not engaged in struggle in the South as a national party. So what you get instead are black leaders in individual counties, like Montgomery County. There's an African-American woman who leads the Democratic Party in Montgomery County, Alabama, and she says things like this: Alabama has been so neglected by the National Democratic Party that you can't even call it a distant cousin. So, in this election, if you want to talk about mass turnout and any role by the Democratic Party, really what you're talking about are currents of African American people still tenuously affiliated with the Democratic Party in Alabama who are still fighting for the basic democratic right for the vote. The basic democratic right for the vote, which Lenin said we have to fight as socialists for all the basic civil democratic rights on the path to socialism. Not saying that the black women who are organizing all are socialists. I'm saying we as a party have to recognize the importance of fighting for the basic democratic rights, including the right to vote, which is still under enormous attack in this country, in the U.S. and in the South. And here's, another piece of information to remember about the struggle in the South. Voting while black in this election in Alabama was under tremendous pressure. The voter intimidation was ramped up. People who were trying to vote in Homewood, which is a Birmingham suburb, African American people trying to vote were being pulled over by the city police and ticketed as they tried to get to their voting place. The decision in the Supreme Court in the last couple of years that gutted the 1965 Voting Rights Act, that attack on the Voting Rights Act came out of Alabama. Shelby County, Alabama, the white commissioners filed that attack on black voting rights. So there's tremendous voting intimidation that was going on during this election that the mass organizing was up against. It was a coalition effort. It was led by the black community, 98% of black women, 93% of black men. There were also other groups involved. There was LGBTQ organizations involved, immigrant rights organizations, Muslim organizations, Jewish organizations. There were independent groups that sprang up just to fight this particular campaign that were grassroots groups. The point I want to make that also connects to the earlier comments on the rise of women's organizing is this. Racism still left a very heavy, visible mark on the voting record in this campaign. It is true that women with children under 18 backed Jones and voted against the rapist, sexual assaulter Moore. 66% for Jones, 32% for Moore. But that included all women. And if you look at the voting record of white women in this election, 63% of white women voted for Moore, despite the well-supported evidence that he was basically had committed a sexual assault on a child under the age of 14, which actually fits most legal definitions of statutory rape in the U.S. So 34% of white women voted for Jones, 63% for Moore. Almost 3/4 of white men voted for Moore. Now, those are very sobering figures. They signal there is a still entrenched hold of the divide and conquer racist strategies of big new, big steel, agricultural, and business interests that continue to this day in Alabama. This propaganda, policy, and laws have for centuries indoctrinated white workers into racism and set them against black workers to murderously unequal but real detriment of both groups. A vote for Jones in this bourgeois election offered white people, specifically white workers, a chance to protest the racist propaganda and hold of the owning class. They did not rise to that challenge. Only 34% of white women crossed over, or not all of them were crossing over politically, but voting against racism. Now, what lesson can be drawn from this? The South is the fastest growing region economically in the U.S. right now. Alabama's competing for manufacturing and corporate business to locate there. That's one reason the so-called moderate Republicans were flip-flopping against, maybe they were going to come out against Moore. Some of them did come out against Moore. They didn't want a polarizing figure that would stir up organizing by workers or by people who were African-American people who were fighting against racism. They didn't want the chance of solidarity across class lines. Well, here's the lesson. We have to, throughout the country, be doing whatever we can as a party to reach out to white workers who will fight against racism and connect across any party lines and any other kinds of lines to fight against racism. It's a very, very important focus, but particularly in the South. And especially as we enter this era where the white workers who went for Trump and who went for Moore are going to be taking it on the chin as the Republicans. They've said they're going after Medicare, they're going after Social Security, they're going after Medicaid, they're going after any benefit that they can that was won during surges of mass organizing from the 30s to the 60s. This is our chance to explain patiently, as Lynn said, why it is so important to be in solidarity with people of oppressed nationalities, why it is so important to forge solidarity and coalitions that we can strengthen each other and go up against those reactionary currents. So, what lessons have the Alabama election to offer? There are many lessons, and I hope we can talk more about them during the Q&A, but here are the ones that I've gleaned. There must be mass independent organizing. There must be fierce anti-racist work, especially with white workers. There must be solidarity between people oppressed and under fire because of their nationality, sexuality, gender, or disability. There must be a resistance that steadfastly seeks the way forward toward a world without capitalism governed by socialist principles. That is the only way to a lasting victory against injustice. That's it. Thank you. The evangelicals. Here's what I think might be helpful as people think about the evangelical vote in Alabama and in a lot of the Deep South. The Christianity that almost all white people have in the South, but certainly I was raised with, but it's still enduring, especially in rural areas and small towns, is a Christianity that was really developed and forged by the slave owners to justify enslavement of African people, and also then, of course, segregation later as the years went by, is a terrible justification of all kinds of things, including, besides the enslavement of people and segregation, also anti-woman, anti-LGBT. It was a religion that was devised to hold a certain economic system in place, and it has continued in the South with deliberate propagandizing through literature and speaking and leaders. That religion has continued to be taught to the white working class and inculcated in the white working class. A lot of the literature, the Christian literature that I was exposed to when I was growing up in the South, later I discovered was developed by Texas oil millionaires. They had their own company to spew out this religious propaganda. So I think that has to be remembered when people are saying to themselves, what is wrong? Why are these white people continue to be fixed in this racist pattern? The use of Christianity, and here's the other connection. It's not just the use of Christianity, it's the fact that the reactionary history of this region has meant that social organizations that would be sustaining to poor white people and support them in some kind of way, just like social organizations that would be sustaining to poor black people. Those are the ones that would have been developed by the white community have been cut short by this reactionary position that they are in, the white workers. And unfortunately, that means that for almost all white workers, the only organization they turn to when they lose their job or when cancer strikes and they don't have any money, they don't have any health insurance, is their church. If you leave your church, it means you also leave your family. That is how entrenched things are. So we're really talking about how do we build organizations and networks that offer people a way to step away from their reactionary families, their reactionary church, and into this future of solidarity of white workers with workers of oppressed nationalities. It's a big challenge. We've seen our comrades in North Carolina make do some wonderful work around that. There are also comrades in North Carolina who are doing union organizing, the Southern Workers Assembly, the Southern Workers School. There are all models that this party is very deeply connected to. But I think it's a hard thing, I think, for people from other regions to understand the depth of propagandizing by the church, the white church, of segregation and racism in the South, the depth of that, and the degree to which, if you break with that ideology, you're breaking with your physical support system if you're a white worker. Who is going to feed your family, and who is going to help you with your medical bills, if not the church you belong to that's preaching all this hatred? So it's a very thorny problem, but working on worker solidarity as more and more reindustrialization happens in the South, that is one way to counter that fact. That's it. That's all I want to say about that question. So I really don't, I'm with Teresa, I really don't have any closing comments except to say that I think it's really important for us all to remember how deeply committed Workers' World Party has been to fighting for the liberation of all women and against oppression based on gender and sexuality since its beginning, before it became a party, when it was a tendency. We don't, we perhaps haven't emphasized this as much recently as in earlier decades. And I think it's very important to remember this is something the party has never wavered on. Never. It is as integral to the party's principles as our anti-imperialism, as our solidarity and commitment to the liberation of oppressed nationalities. It is not a secondary theme in the party. The fighting for the liberation of women and fighting against oppression based on gender and sexuality. There were certainly times in the party's history where the leading comrades might not have even understood fully, especially issues around trans oppression. But I know that even in the early years, the leading comrades were saying, we may not understand it fully, but we know oppression when we see it. And so the connection between these issues of oppression, the threads that tie them together as a basis for solidarity, that's deeply woven into the fabric of this party. And I think that the forum tonight and the talks that are coming up, I hope that people there will take advantage of the fact that you're there and you can actually go to the talks. And then the rest of us will certainly be looking for the videos and the audios so that we can follow as well. I'm very happy to be with you.
Red salute, Minnie Bruce.